All right, today is Tuesday, June 26, 2018, and we are interviewing organizations who have requested funding from the City of Watertown. So if you'll go ahead and introduce yourselves, then you can do your thing.
I'm Prudy Calvin.
I'm Jim Roby. I'm the Vice President of the Millette Memorial Association. Prudy's the President.
Okay, so what would you like us to know about your request?
Well, first of all, I think, as I wrote in the questions you had asked, the one thing that is so wonderful about the money that we get from the city is most grants are allocated for one thing. This money helps us to pay bills that we always have, such as our electrical bill. We pay the guides. The board is a 9-person volunteer board, but we do have guides that work at the house, and they are paid. We have all the expenses that any homeowner has, plus we are built in 1885, so we're 133 years old. And we have several thousand visitors come through in a summer, so you have a bit of wear and tear that your normal house doesn't have, so the upkeep on the house is considerable.
Mm-hmm. Is the place shut down and utilities turned off in the wintertime?
No, you can't do that in a historic home. We turn them down, but because of the nature of the contents of the house, and we have original Millette furniture, we have original clothing, we have original papers, they cannot take a huge variance in hot and cold. We have plaster walls. They would, if you turn the heat off, they would crack. We would have, I think, messes that would be far. So even though we are not open to the public in the winter, we still have to heat the house and care for the house all winter long.
Do people come in once a week and check on things? Or?
Yes, we have volunteers that do that to make sure the furnaces are on, there aren't any problems. And you know, the Millette house is a brick structure, and back in those days there's no insulation. And you know, the structure's sound, but it even at, what do we leave it at, like 50 or 55 degrees?
55.
Those are pretty good expenses during the winter, and we do have one of the volunteer board members goes in and checks every week. We each take a month, you know, or part of one, and check on it.
And as Jim said, our walls, because the Millette house is built of brick that was made right here in Watertown from the Millette McIntyre brickyard, but they're 3 bricks thick, but there is not one drop of insulation in those walls, and there is no way to put insulation in those walls because the plaster is directly on the brick, so it's not like homes where they blow insulation in. That can't be done there. It's just the way that when you have an 1885 house, they built a little different back then.
Why do you feel it's so important to keep a historic home like this open to the public?
You know, I'll maybe comment on that. First of all, I think the very fact that it's here and it's in Watertown, even if we didn't have one visitor, it has a great deal of significance to the state. The last territorial governor, the first state governor, of course, that was the home he built, and he was very important not only to Watertown but to the state. And so just preserving that history is important. But we do get you know, visitors, and people are aware of it, and it's on display. We get school kids taking tours through it, and so it's we have, as Prudy had mentioned, we have original Millette family furnishings in there, and so it has great historical significance, and it's preserved very well. So it's just an interesting place too. But
It gives people also, not just of the Millettes, but we talk about early Watertown and what life was like, and how people really struggled and worked to make Watertown go. It didn't just all of a sudden you built a little town here. No, they worked hard, and he worked hard for the town, for the state, for all of it. And it kind of gives you just a look at life that you hadn't thought about or had forgotten about since you were a kid and took history, and people really enjoy it. And just today I had a meeting with the guides, and we were talking about the comment we hear the most of our guests that come through the house is, I had no idea it would be this beautiful. And it is beautiful. It's well preserved, it's well taken care of, and it is historically accurate. It isn't something that looks like it was from then. It actually is. We are so fortunate that the family in the 40s and 50s, the Millette family, gave back to us not all, but some of the original pieces that were in that house. Those are irreplaceable because they did belong to that family. They were there. You truly are getting a slice of history when you walk into the Millette house.
When was the last year that the house was occupied?
Probably about 1940. After the Millettes left the house, it was rental property. Well, the state took it, because of the fiasco with the secretary, the treasurer, the state treasurer had absconded with the state money, which included some that Millette had been bondsman for. And Millette turned over to the state all of his property, including that house. And then
Treasurer hightailed it to South America.
Yes, he left. He left the country.
And then Millette felt.
And all of the other signers.
Trying to make up for it.
Yes, all the other signers transferred their property to someone else, and he did not. He stood up and took what it, what it was, and he owned a great deal of property. They did get the house back. He then died very suddenly. He was only 52 years old. And Maggie, it took 10 years for the state to give just the house. She didn't get any of the other property back, but she did get the house back finally. And then the house was, it was rental property, and it was bought and sold as old, as homes were. And then it was an upstairs and a downstairs apartment, and finally it was simply abandoned. In 1943, the fire marshal condemned the house and said it was in such terrible condition. The windows were broken. It was, many older residents would come through the house through the years and tell us how they played in the house when they were little, because it was just an
empty and open.
An old house. And so when the Millette Association formed, which was just local citizens formed, and I think they must have had 1 million bake sales, but they raised the money and bought the house and then started to fix it up. And after they started fixing it up, then the family became aware of the needs for the house too, and that's when they got the original things back. But it was probably in the late 30s, 40s, early 40s, because the Millette Memorial Association was formed in 1943 and actually took possession of the house in 1944.
Wow.
And we have owned it since.
All those years.
And they had a couple of short commercial purposes. Radio station for
the
sure.
first radio station in Watertown was there. Because
it was a high point.
It's the high point of town. And again, I have had older residents come in and tell me that the radio station was on the second floor, and they'd come in and sing on the radio. And so, yes, the first radio station was theirs.
And then it was an officers' club, or didn't have a short period of time during World War II where servicemen had it?
Because they went through a period of time too before they got the Millette furnishings. They didn't know what to do with it. There was no historical museum in town, because that didn't get formed until 1975. So they kind of thought maybe it'd be just they had, I think every club in town met there, and they did get furniture. People would donate just anything, so it must have been a hodgepodge of who knows what. But you're right, it was like the officers would meet there, and this would meet there, and this would meet there. But it was a way of getting revenue, because The foundation needed to be fixed. I mean, everything in that house needed to be fixed. It didn't, when they got it, it didn't even have windows in it. Several years ago, maybe, we started doing some work on one of the windows. One of the guys working on the windows, I was there, came down and said, "Prudy, look at this. Down in this wall, must have been nothing, and there was a bird's nest down in here." And I mean, he was pulling out the darndest stuff from when the house sat empty. Of course, it gave housing to every rodent and bird in the neighborhood, I'm sure.
Yeah. How do you measure the success of the program? And this is a question I ask every organization. It probably doesn't fit real well with the Millette Association, but.
Well, I think our biggest success is we're standing, and it's a beautiful home, and is accessible to people to come see it. I mean, I just think it is fantastic that it's still here.
Do you track
yes.
how many people come through?
Yes, we do, and we do by state and by country. I think the biggest, one year we had 10 different countries, visitors from 10 different countries. And as Jim had said, some of our visitors, of course, school children, which is wonderful, but we have, it is a destination for some people too. They read about the Millette House and they want to see the Millette House. And so they come here to see we get a lot of referrals with the Redland Center back and forth. That has just, all of ours are good about referring. We refer each other, but our people are kind of, it's just been wonderful for that purpose.
Yeah, a lot of people, if you ask them, they've come to Watertown, they want to see the Millette House and the zoo and the Redland Center. And so, that's a good full day for them in Watertown.
Yeah. What's your biggest challenge?
Paying our bills.
Yeah. Utilities, continually, as everyone knows, it's expensive to heat that house without insulation. And so, yeah, it's paying the bills and then the upkeep on the place.
The upkeep. Now, this summer, we will start a little later this summer. We'll start on a roofing project. We won't get the whole thing done this summer. But when you, as anyone knows, when you do your own home, you don't know what you're going to get into. Well, put it into an 1885 house and you start doing a project and you go, oh my goodness, we had no idea we were going to run into this. And so that we have, because it is a historic home, we have insurance costs, which are high. We pay the guides, and then you have, as you know, you have payroll insurance, and you have, all of the things you have when you have a payroll. So we have a lot of expenses that you don't think about, but they have to be paid.
Right. What's your vision for the future of the Millette House?
Well, I think ideally we'd want to keep it just the way it is, so it's preserved and people can go in there and see what it looked like when the Millettes lived there. And that's a big challenge, holding a house like that still, and then having it available like we are. It's usually May
1st to October 1st.
Yeah, and so and just being always able to have it open for the public. And again, it's just the fact that it's there is important. We get requests, not a lot, but we will get requests from time to time where somebody may be doing historical research. They have a question about the Millette family or something like that. And so we're a resource for those, that kind of information. Whenever somebody writes an article about Watertown, there's a picture of the Millette House in it.
That's true.
It's iconic with Watertown.
It really is.
Just, and of course, this year we made the list of the grandest mansion in the state, which if you looked at the competition from the other states, I think we did just real well on that. But it is, as far as being historically accurate, and we're just right on the money.
Yeah.
So it's
if
something.
we can keep it that way, that's the big challenge.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas for future ways to raise money to keep it going?
Go ahead.
Oh,
We've tried. Historically, we went That has to be at least 10 years ago now, but we opened up during the Christmas season.
Mm-hmm.
We did that for, was it 2 years, I think?
Yeah, that was before me, but
And,
I remember it.
And the chamber encouraged us to do that. It was really nice. We had a lot of visitors go through, but very hard on the house.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
People
ruined the
coming in,
carpet.
yeah, with
Had to replace the
Oh,
carpet.
snow, and then the utility costs were astronomical then.
Doors open and shut.
Yeah.
Open and shut.
And you had to get workers.
Yeah.
And in the Christmas season, that's
Yeah,
very difficult.
and so we gave that a try, and have decided that while there were a lot of positives, the negatives outweighed the positives considerably on that. So having the season that we have, May into October, just makes a lot more sense.
One of the things is, and I don't think people, and I honestly, one of the questions asked on our questionnaire was, how many hours of volunteer work do you think goes into the house? Well, our board is 100% volunteer. And then we have others that, the guides are paid, but they also put in volunteer time. They're absolutely spectacular. I was surprised. We have over 1,000 hours of volunteer work at that house. And there's so many hours in the day and so much that you can do. And we already have people giving a lot just to keep those doors open.
Mm-hmm.
That is, we have to take that into account too.
Sure.
It's probably much higher than that, but it's hard to track that. But like during the winter, we shovel the walks up there.
Well, I work on the research of the house. We work on getting things, the guides, they have to learn you don't come in knowing these things. I will be amazed some days. I love it, but I've put a whole day in.
Mm-hmm.
You've put in tremendous time on, we have tax papers, we have all kinds of things that have to be done, legal things that Jim has stepped up to the plate and helped us with so much, things that we sometimes don't even see coming down the road, and so there's so many that help us throughout the year. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else you want to make sure people hear?
If it wasn't for the city support, we couldn't be open.
Okay.
We are not self-sustaining.
Mhm.
We simply are not self-sustaining, and so we would eventually have to close the doors
Mhm.
because we cannot. I just cannot see how we could be self-sustaining.
And yet there are people that come to Watertown to see the Millette House.
Yes.
And then they go out to eat,
Yeah.
and then they get gas in their
Right.
car, and they
Right.
do a lot of other things too. That it is a destination for people. So it's
It's a real gem. If I think many other communities in Watertown would love to have this. If
Mhm.
it was in Sioux Falls, or even in Pierre, and there's the home of South Dakota's first governor. We have a wide-ranging reputation. We have, I think of the context we had over the years with the Wiley House at the University of Indiana, which is
Maggie's parents lived in the Wiley House, and he was a professor at the University of Indiana.
And it's preserved on that campus.
It's a historic home, and so we go back and forth with them occasionally on different things. That's where Maggie met Arthur. He came and boarded there when he went to college.
When he was in law school.
And that is where they met. And so, yeah, there's just so many. As Jim said, I think a lot of places would like to have the Millette House.
Mm-hmm.
We are on the National Historic Register, and people think, oh, you get money because you're on the national. No, you get a plaque on the side of the house. It's a lovely plaque, but
And you can't make changes.
but you don't get 1 cent because it's an honor to be chosen,
Mm-hmm.
and we are absolutely thrilled that it's on the National Historic Register. But it gave us a lovely plaque on the side of the house. Do stop by and read it. It's very nice, but it doesn't pay the bills. And I think that's the thing people forget is you have your household bills. So do we.
Right.
We have to mow the lawn. We have, you know, we have all the bills you have as a homeowner. And then some, because we are open to the public. So it's...
And yet, you know, because of the age of the house, we can't have events there. We don't have adequate facilities, running water that would, you know, we do have running water in the bathroom, but we can't really have large
Right,
groups there and
right.
things like that.
Yeah, somebody else say, oh, why don't you have
Parking.
weddings? Why
Yeah.
don't you have... Well, we have a bathroom that works, but we have no water heater. We have one tap of cold water. And so when we clean the house and that kind of thing, when we want hot water, what we do is we fill percolator coffee pots with water, and we plug them in, and then you have hot water. That's how we get our hot water for cleaning and things. So we do operate truly as economically, I think, as possible, but there are things we can't do because of wear and tear on the house. You don't go in and have a family reunion and everybody sits on the furniture. No one would ever do, I don't think, anything on purpose, but people spill. Things get, well, you would have nothing. In a short time, you wouldn't have a historic house anymore. The things would wear out.
Right.
So we have to be so careful to preserve what we have.
Yes. Well, thank you for your efforts in keeping the Millette House open. I know it's a lot of work, and you've both done so much to do that. And also thank you for coming today and giving your pitch. For
Thank you.
Thanks to the city.
Yep.
Yeah, we have appreciated the support the city has given us through the years. It has, oh my, helped us immeasurably, I think.
Yeah.
So
Very
thank
good.
you.
All right.